Welcome back to the podcast. This is a familiar face. You have seen Cashelle before. On today's podcast, I have Cashelle Kali. She was on episode number 53, where we talked about BDSM 101 from a submissive. This is one of our most listened to episodes, definitely most watched on YouTube. And so I knew that we had to have Cashelle back on. And today our topic is different. Now, we're still staying in the BDSM realm, but today we're talking about exploring trauma through BDSM, and Cashelle's going to help us understand what does that mean, maybe give us some tools or some exercises to kind of play with it a little bit. So Cashelle, for those that don't know who you are, would you give us a little bit of an overview? And then whenever you're ready, I'm ready to dive into today's topic.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cashelle. An overview. Well, in relation to this podcast, an overview would be my experience as a sub, right? And for in different ways and at different levels for the past maybe 2.5 years. Beyond that, there's a lot of context I could give. That might be what's most in relation to this podcast, though, right?
That's fun, right? So 2.5 years-ish, you've been a sub. So again, go back to episode 53 if you want more information about that. Cashelle was very good at being very transparent and giving us a lot of information in that episode. Outside of being a sub, you're freaking a ton. You're a mom, you're a yoga teacher, you own an apothecary, and you sell amazing oils and tinctures and salves. I own a bunch of them. In fact, I have one not here, but by my bed, the chest rub. It's because it's winter and I'm like slathering it on before I go to bed.
The immune stuff. Yeah.
So many yummy
We have the yoga
oils and things.
Reiki attunements. Yeah. All kinds of synergistic, intuitive, witchy things.
Ooh, and I have a friend that just went through your Reiki one. She said you did an amazing job.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So Cashelle does a lot of things. And at the end of this podcast, we're going to put a link to her website. So if you want to have more information on this topic today about healing trauma or exploring trauma through BDSM or submissive stuff, or like where to buy a flogger or how to get an essential oil, you're going to be like dropped into one spot that has all the cool things that Cashelle does. And then if you're local, you can hit her up for a yoga class.
The beautiful thing about synergy and intuition, both I have a synergistic gift beyond like intuition, is that I get to have like a knowledge base of a lot of different things, and they come together in the perfect way for each individual, for each session, regardless of what we're doing. And I think that's probably guided. I think it's probably because everything's filtered through Reiki now. Even gifts that I had before Reiki are now, it's like a way of life. And so it's beautiful to see how things present differently for different people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So individualized sessions, etc.
I have another friend that Cashelle has partnered with and made skincare. So she's got Reiki infused skincare where they like doused and made sure that the right ingredients were in it. It's phenomenal. I actually get to see this friend.
We created a skincare line.
You're amazing.
Yeah.
But back to today's topic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Exploring trauma through BDSM. Go ahead and tell us about this topic.
Oh gosh, where to start? Where do I start? Okay.
Why? I think a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why?
I think I probably didn't know that's what was happening at first. I probably didn't go, oh, I'm going to delve into this arena of BDSM and heal my trauma. I don't think that pre-happened. I think I was ready to have sexual relationships with other people and do self-exploration. I really had never dated. I bet you I was like, get into a relationship, stay in a relationship. And so this was a very experimental time for me. And so going into it, I doubt that I realized that's what was going to happen. And so what I started to realize personally, in my opinion, was that a lot of kink is rooted in trauma. And that's okay. I'll just say a lot of my kink was rooted in trauma, or is, and to be completely honest, somewhere after I was kind of seasoned at playing this way, there were some traumas that I was like, gosh, I hope those don't clear because I really enjoy this kink so much. I don't want it, the day that this one heals will be a sad-ish day.
Can you give us some examples? So people that are listening that are not in the kink space, that think this is kind of an obscure, weird topic, what are some examples of things that are coming through typically because of kink, because of the trauma that you might have had?
So the first thing that comes up for me is that being domed, being controlled, being told what to do. It served some parts of me that had like decision-making fatigue, right? And it felt very safe to me because it felt like being taken care of. Because I didn't feel taken care of. Because I had a lot of freedom, and that felt great when I was 12 and 15. I thought that was cool, but as an adult, I realized I actually felt really uncared for and unsafe. And then if I went back further, yeah. And so in this way at that time, it made me feel really cared for, to be told what to do, to have boundaries set for me, to be controlled per se.
Give us some other examples outside of being dominated.
Oh,
like I'm thinking even impact play.
Impact play. Okay. Impact play served as a few different things. So impact play could immediately bring me back into my body if I were disassociated. So disassociation through some masochistic impact play, I actually realized I actually was able to see the very root of when I learned to disassociate in this life. And it was at such a young age that it's, gosh, I probably, who knows when I ever was fully back in, if ever, until. So impact play would serve to bring me back into my body if I was disassociated. Impact play could serve as just fun, if it's, especially if you don't, for me, depending on your pain tolerance, especially if you don't pass those thresholds, it can just, for some reason, be fun. Personally, though, the time when I learned to disassociate was during a spanking, like a traumatic, it is abusive.
As a kid.
Yeah, as like, like as a 5-year-old. Also, a punishment for me as a 5-year-old was to be grounded into my room, to my bed for like a week at a time. And so disassociation, right? And it was through some masochistic impact that I had this realization, and then was able to go back and clear it and start recognizing that every time I would start to go out again. And so maybe I would have found that out another way. Maybe I wouldn't have. Impact play would also serve, so I don't have really masochistic tendencies. I went through a solar plexus upgrade where I don't derive joy from masochism anymore. And prior to that, though, it would serve as, gosh, what I want to say is that it made me feel worthy again. Like maybe like if I were internally guilting myself or beating myself up or shaming myself, it could like reset the balance. Like what if, like as if, and these were never conscious thoughts. These are always afterthoughts when you're realizing what's happening, right? But it probably was something like I deserved to be punished in some way. And so that did that. And now we're reset. And now I can be back online. Reset the thoughts. And frankly, it would be easier to have that happen than to continue beating myself up. So I could punish myself through someone else punishing me. Yeah, if that's what I thought I needed. And that would also be based in trauma, like, right? A person, if I think I deserve punishment, that's based in trauma somewhere. So
Absolutely.
I discovered all these things. Yeah, that's a lot of information. Does this make sense?
It totally makes
Okay,
sense.
cool.
So
Okay.
you've given
I'm
us a
trying to
couple
think.
examples of like your personal traumas that have come up. I think of like the opposite of masochism. Excuse me. So if somebody was really into like sadism,
Uh-huh.
how does that clear a trauma? And does it? Maybe it doesn't, because that is an extreme.
So that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
Sadism is the person who enjoys inflicting the pain. Yes.
Right.
So, oh man.
Right. I know. I kind of went to the absolute extreme there,
You did. And
but I
I can
wonder because
kind
there's
of
a
go to
dark
the
and a
flip
light
side
to
of the
each.
coin.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so I would perceive that as getting their pain out from a
Mm-hmm.
trauma perspective, because that's not all masochism and sadism. I'm not saying it all has to be about trauma, and some people possibly just enjoy it, not based in trauma. Like, right? I'm not
Yeah.
from a trauma perspective. Um, I would say that it's some examples might be it's a way of getting their pain out. So like when I'm feeling a lot inside, it overwhelm,
Mm-hmm.
sensory overwhelm until I have an anger outburst, like the
Mm-hmm.
energy, And so I feel like if I were a sadist, I could exalt some of my own by by consensually getting that
Mm-hmm.
energy out with someone else consensually.
And being
Um,
paired well with a masochist, by the way,
yeah,
because
yeah,
most people don't enjoy
all
pain.
very consensual. Yeah.
Right. But
The
if they're
other
paired with
thing,
someone like you, that's like, I love the reset. And I've met several women within just
yeah,
the last few months that are like, I really enjoy getting to the edge of my pain tolerance threshold. And it does something to reset my brain.
yeah,
And it feels really, really good inside.
yeah,
And then they
yeah,
can come out fresh. So if
yes,
you're listening and you think that this sounds pretty crazy, it's actually a thing and it
yeah,
works. Yeah.
yeah. I wonder if they experience disassociation in particular, a reset from what, right? Because a reset from disassociation, a reset from shame, maybe they go hand in hand for some people.
Great question.
I'd be curious, yeah, to hear other people's perspectives about what they're resetting.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Can you give us
Um,
maybe one more example of a common one that someone listening might be like, oh, or like, I have this trauma. It might help to use this
of a common,
particular
an
version
example of a common trauma or common
that
kink
you
that would
could.
go with it.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, yes, I will. Can I say one more thing about the
Yeah, please.
sadist?
Hmm.
I think it's also a sense of control, which feels safe.
Mm.
If you're the one who, like for me, not having control felt safe. Having someone else I trusted in control is what I needed. But for
Mhm.
someone else, it might feel very good and safe to be the one in control. And if
Mhm.
that's part of your job or your role, and you particularly like impact,
Mhm.
some people really like the marks. They're
Mhm.
just really into the marks. For me, it was a byproduct. I really didn't love them or hate them. It was just a byproduct of something else that I liked. So that's about all I can offer from that perspective because I'm not a sadist. And honestly, I have spoken with a sadist for like a couple of years, just sporadically. We keep in touch. And oh, it's okay, it's a way for them to exalt. Yeah, they were like army. I'm thinking of more than one now, and they were like
Mm.
army trauma. Uh-huh. And so it was a way for them to release,
Mhm.
just release in a maybe even in a primal way.
Mm.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That
I
makes a
think that's,
lot of
yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Businessmen releasing in a primal way. I found a lot of businessmen in the world, in the kink world, that it's just killing them. The
Mm.
culture of business is killing them, and they need a place to release and either be in control or not be in control, however your preference is. But
Mhm.
okay, so a common, you wanted to say another maybe common trauma that would lead to kink, right?
Mhm.
It's the daddy kink. It's the daddy kink. That's got to be the most common one, right?
Mhm.
For me, that was abandonment and rejection. And that's actually the one that I was like, oh, I didn't actually come to that one. I had that one on a list of kinks, but I didn't actually get to play it out until maybe like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, oh, the day this one heals, we'll see how, because it'll look different. When the thing heals, it'll look different. And I may or may not enjoy it, or I may just enjoy it differently, or it may be a total hard no or whatever, but it will change.
Mm-hmm.
So the abandonment kink, the being cared for kink.
Mm-hmm.
What a vanilla kink.
Right?
Like,
and
right?
so sad that we have to make that into
it?
a kink, right?
I know.
But I totally understand that one. I mean, it's not one that I play with. But...
It's getting approval from the daddy. It's getting it's pleasing and getting the I'm proud of you, that you're good at this. God, it's reparenting.
Totally.
It's getting help reparenting my inner child. And that's my job, right? And I can consensually get help from other people.
Right.
So, ooh, yeah.
Yeah. I love that one too. Every now and then I'll feel a glimmer of it. Like I'll pay for dinner feels to me daddy-ish, right? Like I'll buy that vacation that we're gonna go on.
It was ordering for me. It was ordering for me and the and the family. And I just would melt on the inside. Right. Such a small thing, and I would just be like so wet.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it was taking response. It's a lot of responsibility.
And there's something about like being called, like, I've never played with like baby girl, but like kitten or like little pet names that you just kind of melt. And you're like, yes.
Yeah. Yes, definitely the honorifics and the pet names.
Well, I mean, what more can we add to this? You've already given us a list, and then you've given us a way that it heals. Do you want to dig any deeper into like how this is healing, and then maybe what it feels like when you know that you're over it, you've healed it?
That's a good one, because I have a list of more traumas, that examples, but we can do a part 2 or something. Yeah.
No, if you want to bring them up, we're good on time. If you want to bring some more up,
I can bring more up. And I think that's really important what you just said, understanding when it's not beneficial anymore.
And I'm going to also bet that once you overcome something like that, another one comes up.
Yeah.
Like,
hopefully, if that's what you want, if that's what I'm doing, and I'm not just doing that in a BDSM arena. That's my life arena, so that's just one of the more fun ways that I do it. Okay, so I want to point out the things that changed for me when I realized it was different, because it was rocky. It could have easily created more traumas in and of itself. Because once something wasn't right for me anymore, I could give a really personal example. It started to cause me shame. So from the outside looking in, it should have caused me shame anyway, right? But it was actually exalting shame, and it was making me feel very safe and cared for and very, very, very attentive. And
I know which one this is.
Yeah. I need a more private group to say that in.
Okay.
And once I didn't need that level of attention anymore, it started actually causing me shame to keep playing it out. And so the longer it went that I didn't speak up and say, I don't think this is good for me anymore, then I was recreating shame, right? I had just cleared this thing, and now I'm creating another one that I'm gonna have to go back and clear. Like, that's not really beneficial. Maybe not so deep rooted, but it's especially if it's still playing on shame, I think is a big one for people in a kink world. Maybe just humans in general, actually. Then
I can imagine another feeling that would come up would be like irritation. Like, I don't want to fucking do this thing he's asking me to do.
Which leads to disrespect, which leads to a huge breakdown in the dynamic. So, I mean, this seems obvious, but I guess it would be when it doesn't serve you the same way that it was serving you, when it feels different.
Mhm.
when you're not loving it anymore and instead you're feeling icky about it, or when you're not, when you're feeling, maybe you're just feeling elated, like wow, and you can express that. um Communication.
Yeah.
And the sooner that you can bring up, I'm starting to have different feelings about this,
Mhm.
the more respectfully you can do it, and the
Mm.
better it would be received.
Can I ask you a Dom question that has to do with this?
Okay.
So, is there a way to be a good Dom and that you're like on the regular checking in? So, like, I'm wondering if there's a series of check ins, like the
Mhm.
first one being you establish a dynamic to help support the clearing of a trauma and you have a conversation around it with your Dom, with your person that's going to help you heal it. And
Mm.
you say, look, I really want to clear this trauma that I have around needing to feel safe. So we're going to have a Dom sub relationship. And then, of course, you can figure out what the dynamics of that looks like until it's cleared. And then the Dom could say, great, every quarter or every
Mm.
month on the first day of the month, I'm going to put a reminder in my calendar. I'm going to check in with you. And I'm going to say, how are you feeling around this trauma now that we've been working on it? Like, is that a healthy, does that make sense? Like, is this thing? Should it be a
I
thing?
think
Okay.
check-ins are the best. I love check-ins. I love community check-ins. I love relationship check-ins. I love BDS check-ins. I want all the check-ins
Okay.
because it creates a space where I don't have to be quite so brave in bringing
Mm.
up hard topics, uncomfortable conversations, especially from a sub perspective. Like, right, I'm trying to be the most respectful and the most appreciative, and it's also my job to speak up.
Mm.
Um,
Is it unheard
yeah,
of that your Dom should be plugged into you enough to know that something's changed, that
I
you're not
love that.
enjoying it anymore?
I love that. I personally look for that in, certainly in a Dom. I would say almost in any intimate relationship. If I'm going to be like regularly closely intimate with someone, I would love for that to be present. It
Mhm.
might even be a deal breaker for me if it's not. And I get that it's not fair to expect that from everybody of everything. And
Mhm.
in fact, it puts the responsibility outside of myself to someone
Mhm.
else, and that's kind of not sovereignty. I have to be able to say what I need and to speak up, right? However, that might be the trauma that you're working on in and of itself. So maybe you need to make sure you're working with a Dom that's
Mm.
very in tune. And also you're talking about having a pre-conversation,
Mhm.
so, which is a great way of looking at it, that now we all are on the same page from the beginning. A lot of the games I played, as mentioned, I didn't exactly know.
Till it came up.
Yeah, and
But
I
after
processed
the session's over would be a great time or a couple days later to bring up
an
another.
impact session. I mean, I think it's probably definitely a good trait of a Dom, I would say, to be checking in after, before and after impact sessions. Aftercare is
Yeah.
what you might call it,
Mhm.
aftercare. Um,
I love questions like what came up for you during the
yeah,
session?
yeah,
Anything we need to be aware of? And then
yeah.
as a sub, you can say, I had all these like visions come up about being a little girl and being like stuck in my room and not being able to leave my bed. And
Mm,
that was my punishment. And I didn't feel safe and I didn't feel attended for. And like, how can we add this into our BDSM play so that I can
yeah.
clear it?
So, um, yeah, if you're pre-working on traumas, definitely schedule check-ins, because like my voice gets stuck sometimes. It takes less bravery to speak up if you have a check-in. That means someone's coming to you and asking the questions, right? Shoot, I was going to say something, because a lot of things aren't pre-planned like that. So I would say I probably have a bit of both types of relationships. I'm responsible for speaking up for myself and having self-awareness, and I have a pretty intuitive partner.
Mhm.
Um, so gosh, I feel like when I was living in like full subspace, like almost 24/7, he was more deeply in tune.
Mhm.
And that was kind of the unspoken agreement, because if I was going to let go that much, right, then he was going to
Mhm.
pick up the responsibility of that. And now we don't play that intensely. And so he doesn't, so I am able to speak up more now, so he doesn't have to use as much of his energy paying attention to mine.
Which is beautiful, because you're an example of using BDSM to help heal trauma, and where you can come out the other side where you're like,
Yeah.
now I have a voice. Now
Yeah.
I've grown enough and I learned that I need check-ins. I've learned when something comes up in a session to fucking say something, and then create an action plan where we're going to work on the trauma and have a check-in regularly till it's cleared.
Yeah.
How amazing. This is
How amazing. It had never
Delicious.
occurred to me to have a pre-conversation. I just like, I'm kind of an organic, but just go with the flow. And man, structuring an actual pre-structuring dynamics around a specific trauma.
That's amazing. I can see how working with a coach would be really helpful, right? Because something comes up and then you're like, okay, I'm going to work with my boyfriend, partner, husband, dom, whatever, fill in the blank, on this particular subject. And then your coach can help kind of hold you accountable and ask you questions and check-ins
and help move through communication.
Yeah.
And help move through the communication when hard stuff comes up, or a professional. Some people are professional doms. But yeah, if everyday people, I think guidance would be a great idea. Check-ins with a guide.
I
where you
love
can
that.
both here's the thing about stepping into the space. So if you've never done it, and who's going to be your dom has never done it, then the learning curve for both of you, so jumping right into traumas when you're both on a learning curve, is a lot. That's a lot. Secondly, the download I had on the drive to town this morning was that if things go awry, the responsibility of that is going to fall on the dom. And that's a lot of responsibility. And so that's like this extra layer of processing that as a sub, I don't have to do. So if you're a partner, a boyfriend, a friend, whatever, and neither of you are experienced in doing it, there's a lot to come up. And what was the actual download? It was like, it was just an awareness of that imbalance of where responsibility is and how that plays out when things get rocky, and how that's a little bit unfair, because it's like, I trusted you the most. I surrendered to you the most. I gave and opened, and you let me down, right? And it's like, this could either be the worst trust infringement trauma that just seals the deal with whatever trust traumas I'm
You're like,
working
I
on,
can't
right?
trust anybody.
Right. Or we can have some recognition that like, that was the game we were playing, right? And as a favor to me, or you enjoy it. I assume most doms enjoy it, and it feels kind of like my appreciation. I have a deep appreciation, like it kind of feels like a favor to me, was that you took on a shit ton of responsibility. And I can't, it wouldn't probably be great if I just raked you over the coals when that went wrong, because you're holding a bigger percentage of responsibility. Does this make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't want to forget that gratitude when the things get rocky and it seems like you're more responsible.
Yeah.
And hard shit comes up. And so not projecting and blaming, and working really hard to not take the things personally when tough stuff comes up, and to not like vilify someone who agreed to hold a shit ton of responsibility for you, when really that's not the 100% sovereign thing to do, but we're doing it on purpose and consensually, so it's okay. Right. And in fact, it helped me regain, or probably for the first time ever in this life, experience my sense of sovereignty that I then got to integrate and ground in.
Can you think, and I know I'm putting you on the spot and you can say no, but can you think of any resources that you came across as you have been on this sub journey, like a book or a podcast or anything, or have you just kind of fumbled through it with your dom?
Yeah. I'm kind of learn as I go type of person.
Okay.
And I realize this about myself in
That's okay.
business and in relationships and in everything. I kind of like rapid fire use real time feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I also can process pretty quickly if given the space to do so. So that's okay for me.
Yeah.
So
Because I'm
no, I
thinking, like, at
don't.
this point of where we're at with this podcast, I'm hearing you really need a guide unless you want to fumble, right? If you don't want to
Or
fumble
you have
and you
someone very experienced.
absolutely, or you have people in your life that are experienced, if you don't have that support system, um, it feels like it would be at least good to have a conversation with someone.
Yes.
So what I'm leading this to is, Cashelle, if you are open to people contacting you to have a conversation and maybe even some coaching or
Yes.
direction around this topic. Yes, you're saying yes. Okay.
I
So
love it. I love
I
it.
love it. Okay. So we're going to put a link in the show notes below if you want to reach out to Cashelle, that she is open and willing to have a conversation with you about this. And open and willing for some coaching. And then as things evolve, y'all can figure out what that looks like. But I think that would be amazing because I'm over
Yeah.
here like, oh my gosh, I'd need like 12 books and like a PowerPoint and 15 podcasts to try to feel like I was doing a good job, especially the Dom part. That feels like a lot of responsibility. And I've met several Doms and they love it. They're built for it. They're like, I got you. I'm going to figure
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah.
But that is a lot of responsibility. So,
Well, from their perspective, maybe they get to experience the like creation energy power
mhm.
once a female identifying being who carries that light is that open, right? That
Mhm.
must feel pretty rewarding.
Heck yeah. I can imagine how it feels delicious. There's a part of me that's like, I'm totally at some point in my life going to go study how to be a Dom,
Yeah.
DOMME.
I think a lot of Doms, I have met a lot of Doms who were intense subs first.
Mm.
And I'll blow your mind with another, or maybe I won't, with another concept of like topping from the bottom. So
Yeah.
like I'm the sub, but I'm
Mhm.
doming you into doming me. Does this make
Love
sense? So
it.
I'm the
Yes.
dom, but I'm playing the role of the sub. I'm doming you into doming me. So that's an option. There
Yeah.
are no rules.
Nope.
Communication, trust, and consent
Mm.
are really the main rules. And part of the coaching includes a lot of how to go about that part of it to
Mhm.
eliminate further re-traumatizing,
Which feels
getting
important.
re-traumatized. Easy seems easy to do. You would, and it's kind of like if you were purposely going to dig into traumas, you would go to a counselor. I did. I went to therapy, for like, and I was in therapy actually for part of the window of time that I was like for a year of time that I was in this relationship. um Dang, I just keep forgetting all the things I want to say. I don't know. Guess that's it.
This feels like enough for now. This was a
Yay.
wealth of information. I always love having you on.
Thank
And I
you.
always like to add at the end, if you're listening and you want Cashelle to come back on and talk about something different, let us know. I think on any of the platforms that you're on, including YouTube, you can just put a little comment in the bottom. We're also both on social media. We have websites where you can send a contact form. Like there's a million ways to get a hold of one of us. Just let us know if you want her to come back on, talk about anything else. And then if we decide we're going to have her back on, we do as well, right?
Yay.
We'll come up
Yes.
with a new
Yes,
topic.
please.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I always love having you on.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.